Chapter 24. Robinson's Bower. Robinson's sickness set him thinking about his home. He had been so afraid of animals when he came to the island that he thought of nothing but protection from them. He had been now a year on the island, and had seen nothing more dangerous than a goat. The fear of animals had practically faded away. In thinking over his sickness, he made up his mind that it was caused by sleeping in his cave where the sun never shone. The ventilation seemed good, but the walls were damp, especially in the rainy season. Then the water would trickle down through the cleft in spite of all he could do. He resolved to build, if possible, a little cottage, or as he called it, a bower, in the yard in front of his shelter. The hedge of thistles was growing and formed a fence that an animal could not get through. His screen of willows on the outside of this would soon hide him from view of the sea. He had the wall of rock and the hill behind him. He planned out his way of building it very carefully. "It must be done," he said. Robinson formed the habit of talking to himself so that he would not forget how to talk. "Without hammer, nails or saw." He first sought out 4 posts as large as he could well handle. There were always broken trees and branches in the forest. If he searched long enough he could find posts that suited to his need. He wanted 4 of the same thickness and height, and with a fork at the end. After long searching he found what he wanted. He was careful to get those that he could drag to his shelter. He placed these in the ground, forming the corners of a square about 10 feet long. In the forks he placed poles running around about 8 feet from the ground. At about every 3 feet he fastened others, running in the same way, with heavy cords made of fiber. He found his greatest trouble with the roof. It must be sloped to shed rain. He had to find 2 more forked posts, 3 or 4 feet longer than the others. These he placed opposite each other in the centers of 2 sides. Upon these he placed a ridge pole. He then laid other poles lengthwise from ridge pole to the edge of the frames. His frame was now done. His plan was now to cover this frame with straw or grasses tied in bundles. He had seen the barns in the country thatched in this way by the Dutch farmers in New York State. He gathered the straw of the wild rice. It was long, straight and tough. It was easily tied into flat bundles. These he bound securely onto the framework with cords. He began at the bottom so that the ends of the row would lap over the tops of the last one put on. In this way he built a very comfortable and rain-proof bower. It was easy to make a bed of poles covered with straw. A table and bench were added and shelves of poles. Robinson felt great joy over this new home. "I will not now be sick any more," he said. "In case of danger I can get into my cave, but at all other times I will live in my bower." He had use still for his cave. He could use it to store some things in, but he had to be careful about the dampness in wet weather. Robinson was getting to feel at home. He was no longer sad. He did not grieve so much for home. He looked upon his home with great delight. It was secure. He had his herd of goats always in his sight. At evening he would do his milking. He found he could keep the milk for some time in the cave. He was tempted to try making some butter from the rich, good cream. "But," said Robinson, "I have neither vessels to make it in, nor bread to eat it on." He planned many things to do. "I will make a hammock some day for my bower, and some vessels to use in my work," he thought. Chapter 25. Robinson's Bower.